results and proposed resolutions will be shown for each agenda item. Number 4, voting in absentia through the company's online platform will remain open until the end of this meeting. For purposes of presentation, votes received through proxy and votes cast through the voting portal as of 3:00 p.m. today, April 27, 2020, will be shown for each relevant agenda item. 5, the final results of the votes cast will be reflected in the minutes of this meeting, which will be posted on the company's website tomorrow, April 28, 2020. And lastly, the proceedings for this afternoon's ASM will be recorded. Thank you again and welcome.
Good afternoon. I am Aboitiz, the incumbent director, president, and chief executive officer of Aboitiz Ventures Incorporated. I was appointed by the board of directors to preside over today's meeting. Before I call the meeting to order, I would like to welcome our stockholders and guests to the 2020 annual stockholders meeting of Aboitiz Equity Ventures. We also acknowledge the presence of representatives from Sisig Gores Pelayo and Company, the company's external auditor, Luis Cañete, our Board of Elections Inspectors, fellow directors, all members of the board present with us today, corporate officers, including our CFO, Mr. Jimmy Lozano, and our Investor Relations Officer, Mr. Jad Salas. Due to the ongoing threat posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and in compliance with the Department of Health's advisory to avoid physical mass gatherings, the company has resorted to conducting its annual stockholders meeting as an online video streaming meeting. Keeping in mind the precept of innovation being part of our core values, we have made arrangements for this meeting to proceed properly despite the travel restrictions and safety issues that have affected all of us. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, our very first annual stockholders meeting conducted entirely through video conference. By virtue of the authority granted to me, I hereby call to order the 2020 annual stockholders meeting of Aboitiz Equity Ventures Incorporated. May I now call on our corporate secretary, Mr. Manuel Alberto Arcolaico, to certify to the sending out of notices for this annual stockholders meeting and if a quorum exists to conduct this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certify that the notice and agenda for the 2020 annual stockholders meeting was disclosed to the Philippine Stock Exchange and uploaded on the company's website immediately after the special board meeting approving the agenda on March 6, 2020. The notice and agenda for the meeting were also published on March 26, 2020 in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, the Philippine Star, and the Business Mirror. The notice and agenda were also uploaded on the company's website, sent to stockholders electronically via email, and broadcasted through the PTTC platform for the stockholders hold under PCD and broker accounts. As an additional measure, a QR code of the company's information statement was also published on April 2, 2020 in 3 newspapers of general circulation. The notices were sent out at least 21 days prior to the annual stockholders meeting in accordance with the requirements of the revised corporation code and the applicable SEC regulations at the time. Through the notice, the stockholders were informed that due to the enhanced community quarantine in effect in Luzon, the company would not be conducting a physical annual stockholders meeting. Instead, the 2020 ASM would be streamed live. Stockholders have also been notified that if they wished to cast their votes, they may vote through proxy or remotely or in absentia using the online voting portal, votingportal.aboitiz.com. In accordance with the company's bylaws, the stockholders were given until April 20, 2020 to submit scanned copies of their proxies. In view of the ECQ, the company waived the submission of hard copies of the proxies and the supporting documents. Votes cast through proxies and received through the voting portal as of 3 p.m. today, April 27, 2020, will be flashed on the screen for each agenda item. To allow more stockholders to vote, The voting portal will remain open throughout this afternoon's ASM, and stockholders may continue to vote during the meeting. The final tally of votes will be reflected in the minutes of the 2020 ASM. Mr. Chairman, at this point, I certify that we have a quorum to conduct this meeting. As of 3 p.m. today, April 27, 2020, 22,710,830 shares attending through remote communication or in absentia, and 4,714,639,406 shares represented by proxy, or a total of 4,737,350,236 shares have been registered for the ASM today. These shares constitute 84.14%, or more than two-thirds, of the 5,630,225,457 total outstanding shares entitled to vote. This was verified and confirmed by the representatives of Luis Cañete and Company, our Board of Election Inspectors, and who are present with us today.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now proceed to the reading and approval of the minutes of last year's annual stockholders meeting held on April 22, 2019. Copies of the minutes, together with the voting results, have been uploaded on the company's website right after the 2019 ASM. The minutes were also distributed to the stockholders through the information statement.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Hyacinth Antonio, proxy for stockholder Jesusa Nunez. I move that the reading of the minutes of the 2019 annual stockholders meeting be dispensed with and that the same be approved.
Mr. Chairman, I am Pagan Orches, proxy for stockholder Viva Torre. I second the motion.
There is a motion duly made and seconded that the minutes of the 2019 annual stockholders meeting be approved. Mr. Corporate Secretary, were any objections to the approval of this motion recorded?
Mr. Chairman, based on the proxies received and the votes recorded through the voting portal, 4,737,350,236 shares, or 100%, are in favor of supporting the motion. The summary of the votes cast, as well as the shareholders' resolution, is flashed on the screen.
Since the affirmative votes outnumbers the no votes, the motion is carried. We will now proceed with the President's report. For the orderly conduct of the meeting, we will entertain questions on the President's report and on other matters affecting the conclusions of this meeting. This in line with the company's practice in previous physical ASMs. For purposes of this virtual ASM, you can send comments or questions through the chat box, and our moderator will read out your questions during the Q&A session after the meeting has ended. Thank you. Fellow shareholders, team members, friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Aboitiz Equity Ventures annual stockholders meeting. It is my pleasure to report to you the financial and operating results of your company for the year 2019. Global growth in 2019 was slowed down by prolonged global trade conflict, volatile oil prices, geopolitical tensions, and climate-related issues. The Philippines was not spared from this downturn neither, as full year GDP growth slipped to 5.9%, narrowly missing the government's target. Despite this, our country remained as one of the best performing in the region. In 2019, your company recorded consolidated revenues of $201 billion, 8% higher than 2018. The growth was mainly coming from the food group, driven by the full year contribution of Gold Coin. However, consolidated EBITDA decreased by 1% to $60 billion, as the outperformance from our non-power business units were muted by the decline in our power business unit. AEV's consolidated net income for 2019 decreased by 1% to 22 billion. Correspondingly, earnings per share decreased from last year's 3 pesos 95 per share to this year's 3 pesos 91 per share. Our return on equity was 13% in 2019. Stripping out non-recurring items, AEV's core net income for the year was 21 billion, 7% lower than last year. Our power strategic business unit accounted for 57% of the total income contributions from all AEV SBUs. The banking and financial services, food, land, and infrastructure business units contributed 37%, 4%, and 2% on total income 2019, respectively. Last March 2020, your board approved a cash dividend of 1 peso 30 per share, slightly lower than the cash dividends of 1 peso 32 per share paid in 2019. Total dividends paid this year of 7 billion is equivalent to and consistent with our policy of paying 1/3 of your company's previous year's net income. Despite the share price pressure in recent years, the long-term value we created for our shareholders remains intact. When we commemorated our 25th year listing anniversary last November, we were pleased to note that our efforts and achievements have been noticed by the markets as demand for our shares have bidded up the price, giving handsome returns to our trusting and loyal shareholders. Allow me now to take you through the financial and operating results of the company's subsidiaries in a little more detail. Aboitiz Power ended 2019 with an income contribution of 13 billion pesos, 20% lower than 2018. Of this amount, the generating group contributed 12 billion, decreasing by 23% year-on-year. This is primarily attributable to higher power purchase costs, lower availability of our coal facilities, and lower spot market sales. For the distribution group, its earnings contributed to AEV increased by 1% to 3 billion. This is primarily due to the increase in power sales from the increase in consumption across all customer segments. We remain committed to continuously growing our multi-fuel technology portfolio for the ultimate benefit of the communities and the customers that we serve. In 2019, our generation capacity further increased with the commercial operations of the 340 megawatt coal plant of Therma Visayas Incorporated in Cebu and the 19 megawatt La Trinidad Hydro in Benguet. Our large hydro subsidiary, SN Aboitiz Power, also launched its pilot floating solar project in Isabela. For 2020, we will complete the construction and synchronization of one unit of the GN Power Dinginin, a supercritical coal-fired power plant in Bataan. By the end of 2020, Aboitiz Power will own 4,432 megawatts of attributable capacity. Over the next few years, we will continue exploring and pursuing opportunities to push our balanced mix strategy as we believe that the long-term energy security of the country can be solved by balancing sustainability, accessibility, and reliability of power. We will aggressively expand our clean energy portfolio to optimize opportunities from the implementation of the government's renewable portfolio standards, while selectively building baseload capacity to support our country's growth aspirations. We will also pursue our international aspirations with focus on renewable projects in wind, hydro, and solar, as well as exploring natural gas. When we achieve our renewable energy and international goals, we would have built a 50-50 clean energy and thermal energy mix. Moving on to our banking unit, Union Bank contributed 7 billion pesos, a 100% increase in 2019. This was driven by margin improvement, robust growth of higher yielding loan segments, and higher non-interest income components. This strong earnings performance translated to higher return on average equity and return on average assets compared to the year-end 2018 figures, and are above the industry averages. Our loan book ended the year at 393 billion, a 21% increase from 2018. Total deposits, on the other hand, stood at the 484 billion level, or a 15% increase from the previous year. For 2020, Union Bank will continue to focus on growing its retail customer base through digital channels. We will endeavor to sustain above industry loan growth driven by a robust growth in SME and retail segments. To do this, we will leverage on a fully digital loan engine and alternative credit scoring capability to extend credit to platform users. Furthermore, we will integrate the operations of key acquisitions to reap cost savings and increase the productivity. Union Bank will also continue ventures in innovation and launch multiple startups catering to retail and the SME segments. Our food business, Pilmico, posted a net income of 1.6 billion pesos, 2% higher than 2018. This was due to year-on-year improvements from our flour and feed segments, in addition to the full-year income contribution of Goldcoin Management Holdings Limited, of which we now own 100%. With its 100% stake in Goldcoin, the group has solidified its foothold in the ASEAN region. In line with this, for 2020, we will continue building on the network we have done so far to further expand our footprint across the Asia-Pacific region. We will move forward with our plan to integrate Pilmico and Goldcoin, which we expect to bring more opportunities for the whole Aboitiz Group. In doing so, we will also optimize synergies between Pilmico and Goldcoin in procurement, in cross-selling across countries, and shared services in its corporate service units. Moving on to our land unit, Aboitiz Land registered a net income contribution of 943 million in 2019, or an increase of 46% from the previous year's 645 million pesos. This increase was primarily due to fair valuation gains and the absence of them during the 2018. As the Philippine real estate industry is positioned for robust growth, the Aboitiz Group remains optimistic in the fundamentals of the industry as Aboitiz Land positions itself to seize opportunities in the market. In light of the current issues affecting the country, we will continue to offer master planned residential and industrial communities, as well as curated commercial spaces that will remain steadfast through the complexities that industries may face. We will fortify our ownership of the industrial anchored township segment by introducing world-class designs and concepts into our existing developments. We will also strengthen the mixed-use concept in our existing communities by building complementary projects that promote a safe live, work, play environment. Finally, we will further explore various real estate formats that will help maximize the value of current land assets and generate cash through the disposal of non-core assets. For our infrastructure unit, Republic Cement recorded an income contribution to AEB of 612 million, or 187% higher than the 213 million reported in 2018. This was mainly due to the completion of several debottlenecking projects, improved controls on production costs, and a slight increase in private sector demand for cement. In line with the direction of the government has set, we will continue to seize opportunities in the government's Build program while seeking other business-to-business opportunities. We will ramp up the construction of our Apo Agua project, which will supply the Davao City Water District with over 300 million liters of safe water per day. Efforts toward our proposal to upgrade, operate, maintain, and expand the NAIA, Bohol Panglao, and Laguindingan airports will also be heightened. To aid in improving the country's telecommunications, we also will begin the rollout of our Common Towers project. For Republic Cement, we will grow production capacity by adding state-of-the-art cement milling capacities while simultaneously boosting our milling and clinker production in all its integrated plants in Luzon and Mindanao. As of December 31, 2019, the company's consolidated assets amounted to 588 billion pesos, a 6% increase as compared to the year end of 2018. Net debt was at 255 billion, 15% higher than the year-end 2018 level, while equity attributed to equity holders of the parent increased by 1% to 176 billion. The company's net debt to equity ratio was at 1.2 times as of December 31, 2019, while the current ratio stood at 1.3 times. The past year saw the Aboitiz Group maintain its level 4 rating in the Risk Maturity Index. Reaching level 4 means there is a clear understanding of the organization's key risks and also a consistent execution of activities to address these risks. Following the assessment, the group will closely manage and monitor the following top risks: regulatory risk, talent management risk, information security risk, and competition risk. In view of recent events, I would also like to add that having a well-crafted business continuity plan, business impact analysis, and risk mitigation plan is a must for every organization. Crisis truly tests an organization's resiliency, how it would move during and after a turbulent time. It guides the company and its people on immediate response and long-term strategic plans. On that note, please be assured that we are fully equipped and prepared to guarantee the continuity of all business transactions. For more information on our risk management program, please refer to page 148 of our colored annual report. Aboitiz Foundation is the orchestrator of the Aboitiz Group's dynamic and independent CSR ecosystem. The foundation is guided by CSR 2.0 parameters to ensure that we achieve inclusive impact. These parameters include the alignment with the group's core business and the foundation's program pillars, scalability, team member engagement, and the provision of long-term benefits of our partner communities. In 2019, 41% of our CSR projects reached CSR 2.0 status. This includes projects such as the Purposive College Scholarship, Mahaling Pagkain Natin, classroom rewiring, and the community-based disaster risk reduction and management training. Our leadership commits to continuously improve our environmental, social, and government or ESG performance. In 2019, we marked a tipping point on how we will improve on our 11-year sustainability journey. Over the years, sustainability has been ubiquitous in our coverage of environmental management, labor practices, social responsibility, and fair and ethical governance in our business ventures. We have translated sustainability in our brand promise of advancing business and communities. As we grow the business, our stakeholders will grow with us. For Aboitiz, we define sustainable development as an inclusive growth that looks into the dimensions of ESG. Aboitiz has fully embarked on ESG to create long-term value for our stakeholders. We continuously seek better ways to communicate and engage them in creating a sustainable future that will transcend for generations to come. To provide transparency in our ESG efforts, we have published our ESG data on both AEV and Aboitiz Power websites. These pages contain our performance, our general policies, and our processes on a wider range of sustainability concerns of the company. Our aim is to provide clear, timely, and accessible information to our global audience amid increasing demand from ESG raters, insurance, institutional investors, and stockholders for our corporate sustainability transitions and its disclosures. We believe that our transparency provides greater confidence to our stakeholders in knowing that they are investing in a company that holds the highest ethical standards. This year, we celebrate Aboitiz' 100th founding anniversary. We are extremely pleased with how far we have come. But we are also reminded of a time in our history that was marked with uncertainty and our fair share of hardships. When Aboitiz and Company was established 100 years ago, the great 1918 influenza pandemic was still wreaking havoc in many parts of the world. The pandemic took the lives of more than 50 million people. It was certainly a challenging time for Aboitiz and Company to come to life. Still, our founders chose to incorporate and tackle the uncertainty ahead. Our team is focused on understanding the coronavirus possible ramifications to our business. Offhand, the majority of the industries are actually resilient and are not as vulnerable as other sectors. Our supply chain has prepared contingency plans and made sufficient adjustments to manage major disruptions. We have prepared scenario plans for our businesses and are working to provide accessible health services to our facilities nationwide. Our utmost concern now is the health and safety of our team members. We adopted travel, quarantine, and hygiene measures. All our team members here and abroad are constantly reminded of these measures and are given regular updates by our COVID-19 technical working group. To this end, the Aboitiz Group has earmarked 900 million in assistance to help its team members cope with the ongoing coronavirus disease or COVID-19 pandemic following the announcement of a national state of calamity. This amount covers the early release of the end March salary and the 13th to 14th month pay of the group's over 11,000 team members across its strategic business units in power, banking, and financial services, food, infrastructure, and land. As the COVID-19 situation remains uncertain, the Aboitiz Group will continue to deploy assistance nationwide. Simultaneous with ensuring that our team members' needs are covered, we also focus on our kind and monetary donations to communities that need them the most. The Aboitiz Group's total contribution to the national coronavirus disease response effort has reached over 216 million pesos as of April 15, underscoring the group's sustained campaign to help address the urgent needs of frontliners and affected communities nationwide. Since the implementation of our enhanced community quarantine or ECQ in various locations nationwide, our Aboitiz units have deployed their own COVID-19 response activities, while centralized donations were made through the group's corporate social responsibility arm or the Aboitiz Foundation. Combined in kind and cash donations, we have reached 46 million pesos, in addition to an earlier 100 million donation made to the Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation's Project Ugnayan. Project Ugnayan aims to provide assistance by distributing grocery vouchers. And to date, about 7.6 million people in poor communities in the Greater Manila area have benefited from this project. These times are challenging, but we want to assure that the Aboitiz Group will do everything it can to continue building sustainable, empowered, and now more than ever, safe communities. In 1921, a year after its incorporation, the company almost went bankrupt because the price of abaca dropped and it could not sell its huge inventory. Don Ramon Aboitiz was determined to get Aboitiz back on its feet, despite the advice to simply just file for bankruptcy. He borrowed money from friends and businessmen and with nothing but a promise and his palabra de honor. Long story short, the debt was all paid back. As we mark our centenary, we are again faced with a potential pandemic brought by a tiny virus. The world is entering uncharted waters, and the rough seas ahead will test our organization. As an African proverb goes, smooth seas do not make good sailors. We had our share of hardships and have become good sailors, learning many lessons from the past, of which our near bankruptcy in 1921 was probably the greatest one. We are a resilient company with many trials etched in our DNA. We will come out stronger and we will come out smarter. The legacy of Palabra de Honor and our strong commitment to creating long-term value will guide us in the midst of these uncertainties. We have a strong balance sheet that can weather storms as we have done many times in 100 years. We are fully confident in our team of highly experienced leaders, supported by 40,000 team members in 11 countries, to lead Aboitiz into the next decade. We don't know what lies ahead, but I know this much. Aboitiz team is committed to giving its best as we become more and more comfortable with the unknown. To keep the economy going in the face of COVID-19, AEV, together with our partners, allotted 73 billion in capital expenditure as of March 11, 2020. This is 37% higher than the 53 billion utilized in 2019. Of this amount, 41 billion was earmarked by our Power SBU for the completion of GN Power Dinginin, as well as other business units. In the same manner, our infrastructure arm set aside most of the 16 billion it has budgeted for the construction of its water business and its foray into the telecommunications tower business. Meanwhile, our land business is expected to utilize 11 billion pesos mainly for land banking efforts. Rounding out the balance are the provisions of the other SBUs. The food group has allocated capital expenditure for expansion, while our bank will sustain its investment efforts in its digital and branch transformation endeavors. However, given the current situation, we are reviewing the timing of these capital expenditures. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Ramon Aboitiz, who retired in 2019. His 42 years of leadership has led to the transformation of Aboitiz into a major conglomerate. He led us with a clear example of fairness and hard work. Very few worked harder than Monchu. We would not be at the level of a company we are today, which many of us never even dreamed of, without Monchu's foresight, intellectual capacity, and attitude of always finding ways, while at the same time maintaining integrity and the family values. Monchu, thank you for your dedication and leadership, and thank you for sharing your life, your vision, and your expertise with all of us. We all learned valuable lessons that will be lived for many years. We would also like to thank Miguel Aboitiz, who will be retiring at the end of April. Most of his 32 years of values in the Aboitiz Group was with Aboitiz Power. He played a significant role in the initial public offering of AV in 1994 and AP in 1997. He also played a key role in Aboitiz Power's business development activities and created the Energy Trading and Sales Department in 2009 to provide revenue for power plants purchased from the NPC privatization. We thank Miguel for all his valuable contributions to the group and we wish him only the best in the next leg of his life's journey. Before we end, we would also like to thank our senior team leaders, Melinda Batan, Gabi Maniala, Ernest Villarreal, and Susan Policarpio, who are retiring from the group. They leave behind a tremendous body of work that will remain the benchmark for us to emulate as we pursue growth beyond our borders. We wish all of them as they move on to the next phase of their careers. On behalf of the AV board, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all our team members. Thank you for your loyalty, your commitment, and exceptional values in every aspect of your life as part of the Aboitiz family. To all our valued shareholders, thank you for your continued trust and confidence in the Aboitiz Group, especially those who have been with us since we took AEV public 25 years ago. Next item on the agenda is the approval of AEV's annual report and audited financial statements as of December 31, 2019. The annual report, together with the financial statements, were reproduced in the information statement distributed to the stockholders and uploaded in the company's website. A quick response or QR code of the information statement was published in 3 newspapers of general circulation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And for the record and in compliance with the requirements of the revised Corporation Code, we wish to inform the stockholders that the following information was included in the company's information statement. A. The minutes of the 2019 Annual Stockholders Meeting. B. The security ownership of its top 20 stockholders, as well as the security ownership of the company's directors and officers. C. The attestation and verification from the President and the Internal Audit Head that the company's system of risk management, internal controls, compliance, and governance processes provide reasonable assurance that the company's risks are managed to an acceptable level. D. The audited financial statements as of and for the period ending December 31, 2019, as audited by the company's independent external auditor, SGV and Company. E. The dividends declared and paid for the last 3 years, as well as the company's dividend policy. F. A statement on the external audit and non-audit fees. G. The profiles of directors and officers, as well as the profiles of the nominees to be elected to the board of directors. These profiles include their qualifications, experience, length of service in the company, educational background, and their board and committee memberships in the company and in other organizations, including other listed companies or in government positions, if any. H. The attendance report of each director indicating their attendance at each of the meetings of the board, its committees, and its regular and special stockholders meetings. I. The appraisal and performance reports for the board and the criteria and procedure for assessment. J. The report on the annual compensation of each director, as well as the aggregate compensation of the president and CEO and the top 4 highly compensated officers of the company. And K. Disclosures on related party transactions, including dealings with directors.
Thank you for that, Mickey. Is there any motion for the approval of the company's 2019 annual report and financial statements?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Hans Cedric Santos, proxy for stockholder Gemma Bojos. I move for the approval of AEV's annual report and audited financial statements as of December 31, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I am Aaron Go, proxy for stockholder Catherine Alinabo, seconding the motion.
There is a motion duly made and seconded for the approval of the company's 2019 annual report and audited financial statements. Mr. Corporate Secretary, were there any objections to the approval of this motion?
Mr. Chairman, based on the proxies received and the votes recorded through the voting portal, 4,733,334,773 shares, or 99.92%, are in favor of approving the motion. The summary of the votes cast, as well as the shareholders' resolution, is flashed on the screen.
Since the affirmative votes outnumbers the no votes, the motion is carried. The next item of business is the appointment of the company's external auditor for the year 2020. The Board Audit Committee recommended the appointment of CISIP Gores Velayo and Company as the company's external auditor for the year 2020. Upon evaluation, the committee was satisfied with SGV's services and performance as the company's external auditor. In the board meeting last March 6, 2020, the board of directors discussed the audit committee's recommendation and resolved to reappoint SGV as the company's external auditor for 2020. On behalf of the board of directors, I would like to endorse for approval by the stockholders the reappointment of SGV as the company's external auditor for 2020. Any motion for the appointment of SGV as the company's external auditor?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lau Carpio, proxy for Gina Onabia. I move for the appointment of Mrs. Gores Velayo and Company as the company's external auditor for the year 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I am Jeanette Angco, proxy for stockholder Joseph Tugonon. I second the motion.
There is a motion duly made and seconded for the appointment of Mrs. Gores Velayo and Company as the company's external auditor for 2020. Mr. Corporate Secretary, were there any objections to the approval of this motion?
Mr. Chairman, based on the proxies received and the votes recorded through the voting portal, 4,733,870,309 shares, or 99.93%, are cast in favor of approving the motion. The summary of the votes cast, as well as the shareholders' resolution, is being flashed on the screen.
Since the affirmative votes outnumber the no votes, the motion is carried. We now go to the next item on the agenda, which is the election of the members of the Board of Directors for the term 2020 to 2021. We call on the Corporate Secretary to explain the procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The company's amended bylaws allows any stockholder to nominate candidates for the Board of Directors. Specifically, Article 1, Section 7 of the amended bylaws states that nominations for the election of directors for the succeeding year must be received by the Corporate Secretary no less than 15 working days prior to the annual meeting of stockholders, except as may be provided by the Board of Directors and appropriate guidelines that it may promulgate from time to time in compliance with law. In accordance with the company's amended bylaws and the existing nomination guidelines, all stockholders were given up to April 2, 2020 to submit their respective nominees for membership to the Board of Directors. For the nomination of the independent directors, the guidelines for the nomination and election of independent directors provide that nominations are to be accepted starting January 1st of the year in which the independent directors to serve, with the nominations closed by February 15th of the same year, unless the period is extended by unanimous vote of the Corporate Governance Committee. For this year, the AEV Corporate Governance Committee unanimously agreed to extend the deadline to nominate independent directors until March 6, 2020. This was to allow the committee more time to screen the candidates for independent directors. After proper screening and approval by the Board Corporate Governance Committee, on March 6, 2020, the following were determined to be qualified for nomination as directors of the company: Ramon I. Aboitiz, Mikel A. Aboitiz, Enrique M. Aboitiz, Sabine M. Aboitiz, Edwin R. Bautista, and Ana Maria Aboitiz Delgado. The following persons were also determined to be qualified for nomination as independent directors: Rafael P. M. Lotilla, Justice Jose C. Vitu, and Manuel R. Salak III. As mentioned earlier, the complete profiles of the 9 nominees were included as part of the information statement distributed to stockholders.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. This is Gio Gomez. I am a proxy for stockholder Demosthenes Momo. Since there are no other nominees and I find the nominees to be qualified and highly competent, I move to elect the following nominees as members of the Board of Directors: Ramon I. Aboitiz, Mikel A. Aboitiz, Enrique M. Aboitiz, Sabine M. Aboitiz, Edwin R. Bautista, and Ana Maria Aboitiz Delgado. And the following as independent directors: Rafael P. M. Lotilla, Jose C. Vitu, and Manuel R. Salak III.
This is Hyacinth Antonio and I second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
There is a motion duly made and seconded for the election of the 9 nominees mentioned as members of the Board of Directors. Mr. Corporate Secretary, please provide us with the votes received.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The results of the election for the members of the Board of Directors, which have been verified by Luis Cañete and Company, our Board of Election Inspectors, based on the total proxies received and the votes recorded and cast to the voting portal, is being flashed on the screen. These voting results will also be uploaded in the company's website after the ASM today. Based on the total votes cast and recorded, the 9 nominees are therefore elected as members of the Board of Directors of the company for the 2020 to 2021 term.
Thank you, Mickey. On behalf of the rest of my colleagues in the Board of Directors, I would like to thank all of you for your continued trust and confidence. The next item on the agenda is the amendment of the company's Articles of Incorporation. I would now call on the Corporate Secretary to explain the rationale for each proposed amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed amendment to Article 4 of the Articles of Incorporation to extend the company's corporate term to perpetual existence is intended to align with the provisions of the Revised Corporation Code. The proposed amendments to Articles 2 and 7, which are to include in the primary purpose the power of the company to act as guarantor or surety to the loans and obligations of its affiliates and associates, and to amend the features of its preferred shares, respectively, are intended to give the company additional flexibility in its capital and fundraising activities. The Board of Directors approved these proposed amendments to the articles during its meeting on March 6, 2020. We're showing on the screen the proposed amendments to Articles 2, 4, and 7 with the amendments underscored. The language of the proposed amendments were also included in the company's information statement distributed to stockholders.
Thank you for the explanation, Mickey. Is there any motion for the amendments to Article 2, 4, and 7 of the company's Articles of Incorporation?
Mr. Chairman, this is Aaron Go. I move to approve the amendments to Articles 2, 4, and 7 of the Articles of Incorporation in accordance with the language flashed on screen and as stated in the information statement.
This is Hans Cedric Santos, and I second the motion.
There is a motion duly made and seconded for the approval of the amendments of the company's Articles of Incorporation. Mr. Corporate Secretary, were there any objections to the approval of this motion recorded?
Mr. Chairman, based on the proxies received and the votes recorded through the voting portal, 4,546,950,251 shares, or 95.98%, are in favor of approving the motion. A summary of the votes cast as well as of the shareholders' resolution is flashed on the screen.
Since the affirmative votes outnumber the no votes, the motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is the ratification of all acts, resolutions, and proceedings of the Board of Directors, officers, and management for the year 2019, and including all acts up to today, April 27, 2020. Mr. Corporate Secretary, please explain this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The acts, resolutions, and proceedings requested to be ratified are the regular corporate acts performed by the board, the officers, and the management of the company in the ordinary course of its business. For reference, the list of resolutions approved by the board for the period covered are enumerated in the information statement distributed to the stockholders. The company also regularly discloses material transactions approved by the Board of Directors. These disclosures are available for viewing and download at the company's website, www.aboitiz.com. Other than the matters approved in the ordinary course of business, we would like to inform stockholders that the Board of Directors, using its delegated power, also approved the amendment of the company's bylaws to allow the attendance, participation, and voting of stockholders by remote communication or in absentia, starting with today's annual stockholders meeting, which is meant to align the company's bylaws with the provisions of the Revised Corporation Code. We'd like to note that on May 18, 2009, stockholders representing at least 2/3 of the issued and outstanding capital stock of the company approved the delegated authority of the board to amend or repeal the bylaws or to adopt new bylaws. The same delegated authority was renewed during the company's 2015 ASM by an affirmative vote of stockholders representing 87.96% of the stockholders present in person and by proxy in 2015. Pursuant to this delegated authority, and in order to align with the provisions of the revised corporation code, the board approved the amendment to the company's bylaws.
Thank you for that explanation, Mickey. Is there any motion for the ratification of all acts, resolutions, and proceedings of the Board of Directors, officers, and management for the year 2019, including all acts up to today, April 27, 2020?
Mr. Chairman, I am Jeanette Angkog, and I move for the ratification of all acts, resolutions, and proceedings of the Board of Directors, officers, and management for the year 2019, and including all acts up to today, April 27, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. I am Clau Carpio and I second the motion.
There is a motion duly made and seconded for the ratification of all acts, resolutions, and proceedings of the Board of Directors, officers, and management for the year 2019, including all acts up to today, April 27, 2020. Mr. Corporate Secretary, were any objections made against the approval of this motion?
Mr. Chairman, based on the proxies received and the votes recorded through the voting portal, 4,733,018,454 shares, or 99.89%, are in favor of approving the motion. A summary of the votes cast, as well as of the shareholders' resolution, is being flashed on the screen.
Since the affirmative votes outnumber the no votes, the motion is carried. The last item on the agenda is other business. Are there any other matters that the body would like to take up?
Mr. Chairman, I am Hans Cedric Santos, and I move for the adjournment of the 2020 Annual Stockholders Meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Clau Carpio. I second the motion.
The meeting is hereby adjourned. I now request the ASM Secretariat to flash on the screen the votes recorded for each of the items submitted for approval as verified by our Board of Election Inspectors. To all the stockholders who have participated in this meeting, thank you for sharing this historic moment with us. We consider your attendance as a vote of confidence in the company. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the company, I would like to recognize and acknowledge all the Aboitiz team members who have worked tirelessly to make this first ever virtual ASM and online voting portal possible.
It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, and I hope you and your loved ones are safe in these trying times.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other matters for discussion, I would like to ask permission to raise some questions that we received from the stockholders while the meeting was proceeding.
Please proceed, Mr. Moderator, and let us know to whom the questions are addressed.
Yes, sir. Before we proceed, I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of our friends in the media who have joined our very first virtual ASM meeting today. We have, for our first question, we have here asked by Ms. Hyacinth Antonio, and the question is, how were you affected by the COVID virus and the quarantine? I think this is meant for you, sir.
Thank you. Well, various ways. Let me break them up. For the team members, right, the effect of the team members, well, obviously, the COVID-19 posed a clear danger to our team members. So the first step that we took was to protect them. We activated our BCPs. We moved much of the work that we could to digital channels, which we've been doing actually quite a bit of as of 2 or 3 years ago. So we could work from home, and skeletal and shifting workforces were deployed as needed. We also worked with the COVID-19 protocols, and we advanced 900 million in salaries to keep them liquid throughout this ECQ. For our customers, the ECQ affected our customers' liquidity, so we worked on various schemes to extend their financial lifeline. We did things like we waived or reduced fees such as our banking in our banking business. where we extended payment deadlines and waived late fees for credit cards, housing loans, and auto loans, for example. For our real estate business, we waived 1 month of rent for all the tenants in Luzon and Visayas. We also extended or restructured bills payments, such as in our power business. So there was, of course, Davao Light and Deco. So there was a corresponding drop in our collection. So obviously that affected us. And for the bank, we also extended loan payment moratorium for our motorcycle loans. Right? So that was the effect as far as our customers are concerned. Now, the market demand, well, the ECQ affected our business in different ways, some positive and some negative. For the power business, for example, there was an immediate decline in consumption when the ECQ was implemented. So the total daily demand consumption actually dropped by about 40% in Luzon, and then Visayas followed, right? Due to the drop in demand, some wholesale customers of our generation businesses declared force majeure, so we have to deal with that. Banking, for example, we reached record highs in new account openings, so that was a positive. Right? Our digital channels really paid off there. For our food business, we also observed that consumers stocked up on products after the implementation of the ECQ, so our feed and flour lines continue to operate and have strong sales. While we experienced delays in our logistics, we were able to stock up on a lot of the micro ingredients. Like, for example, in China, since most of the micro ingredients are produced there, so we had enough raw materials to cover us until June, right? So we were able to really stock up there. Our land business, for example, selling property the traditional way has been very challenging. Although there were still some sales that were happening, to our pleasant surprise. Our cement business, for example, several of our facilities in Luzon had to shut down due to the reduction in construction activities. Actually, all of our facilities had to shut down. But we kept our warehouses full to be ready to come back. Or in case, in the meantime, if people needed, we had quite a bit of inventory.
Yes, thank you very much for that, sir. I think, well, we have a number of other questions here, but we're already out of time. And so what we're going to do is we're going to respond to all the questions that we have received here online, one by one, via email. And I'd also like to especially acknowledge we have another question here from a number of questions here from Sam Kanwa, a stockholder. So we will, Sam, we've received your questions. We will respond to them in detail. We're already out of time. So with that, I'd just like to assure everybody that we will respond to everyone's questions here. So that is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So again, thank you everyone for attending our 2020 annual stockholders meeting. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the person's name in the slides. Thank you very much. Okay, we're done.
Year after year, one thing has remained constant. Our goal to ensure meaningful economic development and uplift the lives of the people we serve. Amid the changes, we continue what we've set out to do. We believe in an enterprise that reflects our culture, our values, our core. We take inspiration from our past. usher in a new era of progress. Our balanced pursuit for financial gains and sustainability reflects our rich history and our fruitful journey. It shows our commitment to the country's future. The difference we make defines the work we do. Every time we energize our cities, fulfill the dreams of the many, forge genuine partnerships, connect ideas, design experiences, and solve our toughest challenges. We drive change for a better world. By staying rooted in our values and understanding the community's needs, we are able to create an impact that is felt beyond borders. A change that transcends generations. A legacy that will stand the test of time. And as we conquer new horizons, we look back to where it all started. From a small town in the Visayas to our journey to become global, we will remain at the helm. Our next century defined by how we break conventions, rethink the usual, and push the boundaries of possibility. Because our business is your story of firm foundations, purposeful growth, and a future that we share. Aboitiz, 100 years of advancing business and communities.